The golden hues of the late afternoon sun painted long shadows across the quiet streets of Santa Monica. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and distant laughter from the nearby pier, mixing with the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee. On the patio of a small cafe, nestled between a boutique bookstore and a second-hand record shop, Carrie Underwood sat alone, stirring a spoon absent-mindedly in her cup. Dressed in a soft, oversized sweater and jeans, she looked effortlessly casual, her blonde hair tucked beneath a baseball cap. To most passers-by, she was just another customer, enjoying a moment of solitude, a rare break from the constant rhythm of life on the road. Her tour had ended a few weeks ago, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she was able to just be. No cameras, no flashing lights, just a woman with a cup of coffee and a heart full of thoughts. Across the street, a young girl stood hesitantly near the edge of the sidewalk. She was no older than 14, her frame too small for her age, wrapped in a faded hoodie 2 sizes too big. Her shoes, worn and barely holding together, scuffed against the pavement as she shifted nervously from foot to foot. A tattered backpack hung loosely over one shoulder, and the wind played with strands of her tangled dark brown hair. She had been watching Carrie for several minutes, debating whether to approach. The woman seemed kind, peaceful even, a stark contrast to the chaotic world the girl had known. But trust was a currency she had never been able to afford. Still, something about Carrie's presence pulled at her, an unseen force urging her forward. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the shadows and crossed the street. Carrie felt a presence before she saw her. Looking up from her coffee, she found herself staring into a pair of deep, wary eyes. The girl stopped a few feet away, hesitant but determined. Carrie lowered her spoon and offered a gentle smile. "Hi there," she said, her voice warm, inviting. The girl swallowed hard, gripping the strap of her backpack. Do you know who Jesus is?" The question cut through the hum of passing cars and the distant chatter of cafe patrons. A flicker of surprise crossed Carrie's face, but only for a moment. She had been asked many questions in her life about fame, music, success, but never this, never with such raw vulnerability. She set her cup down, fully turning her attention to the girl. "Yes," she said softly, "I do." The girl studied her carefully, as if measuring the weight of her words. She seemed unsure whether to believe her. "What's he like?" Carrie exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment settling over her. She glanced around, noticing a few heads turning in their direction. Some people slowed their steps, subtly drawn into the unexpected exchange. Gesturing to the empty chair across from her, Carrie offered, "Would you like to sit?" The girl hesitated, glancing at the chair as if it were a trap, but something in Carrie's voice, gentle, patient, made her consider the offer. With slow, cautious movements, she slid into the seat, her fingers still gripping the strap of her backpack as if it were the only thing anchoring her to this world. Carrie leaned forward slightly, resting her elbows on the table. "You really want to know?" she asked, her voice kind but serious. The girl nodded. "Jesus is hope," Carrie said. "He's the kind of love that doesn't leave, even when everything else does. He's forgiveness, even when you think you don't deserve it. He's the reason I wake up every morning believing that no matter how hard things get, there's still good in this world." The girl looked down at her lap, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the table. "Starting over, huh?" she muttered, almost to herself. Carrie's gaze softened. "Yeah, starting over. Do you feel like you need that?" The girl didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, almost lost in the wind. "I don't think it works for people like me." Carrie's heart clenched. She had seen this kind of pain before, the kind that makes someone believe they are beyond saving. But she knew better. She had been there, in her own way. "Why not?" she asked, her voice steady but filled with compassion. The girl let out a small bitter laugh, shaking her head. "Because I've done things, bad things, and people like me, we don't get second chances." Carrie leaned back slightly, her fingers wrapping around her coffee cup. "You know," she said gently, "I used to believe that too." The girl's eyes snapped up, searching Carrie's face for any sign of a lie. "You?" Carrie nodded, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. "Yeah, me." The girl stared at her, waiting for more. But before Carrie could continue, a faint murmur rippled through the cafe patio. A few people had paused nearby, pretending to check their phones, their ears tuned to the conversation unfolding before them. Carrie noticed, but didn't mind. This wasn't about them. It was about the girl sitting in front of her, the one who needed to hear this the most. "You think you're too far gone," Carrie said, her voice soft but unwavering. But you're not, and if you don't believe me, I'll prove it to you. The girl's lips parted slightly, but she said nothing. For the first time there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but curiosity. And sometimes curiosity was all it took to start something new. The breeze carried a soft hum of distant music from a street performer down the block, mingling with the sound of clinking cups and quiet conversation. But at Carrie's table, the world had shrunk to just the two of them. The girl sat stiffly, her fingers tightening around the frayed strap of her backpack, as if letting go would mean losing the last piece of herself. "You said you used to believe it too," she said after a long pause, "that you were too far gone." "Why?" Carrie glanced down, exhaling slowly. She hadn't expected to share her own story today, but something about this girl, the pain in her voice, the weight she carried in her small frame, made her want to be honest. "There was a time," Carrie began, her voice steady but low, "when I felt completely lost, when I thought no matter what I did, I'd never be enough. Not for my family, not for the people around me, not for God." The girl tilted her head slightly, intrigued but skeptical. "But you have everything," she said. "People know your name. They probably tell you how great you are all the time." Carrie smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Fame doesn't fix the things you carry inside," she said gently. "It doesn't erase the nights you cry yourself to sleep, or the mornings you wake up wishing you could be someone else." The girl swallowed hard, looking away. She understood that feeling too well. Carrie leaned forward, resting her arms on the table. "I made mistakes," she continued. "I let fear control me. I let shame silence me. And for a long time I believed the lie that I wasn't worth saving. But then someone reminded me of the truth." The girl's gaze flickered back to her. "What truth?" "That grace isn't about earning it," Carrie said. "It's about accepting it, and that no one, not you, not me, not anyone, is too broken to be put back together." The girl's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Her fingers trembled over her backpack strap before she pulled it onto her lap, hugging it against her chest. "I don't know how to believe that," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Carrie gave her a small, knowing nod. "That's okay," she said. "You don't have to have it all figured out right now. Just start with this," she gestured toward the girl's chest. "The fact that you're still here, that you walked across that street and asked me that question, that means something." The girl blinked, caught off guard. "It does?" "Yeah," Carrie said, her tone unwavering. "It means you still have hope. Even if it's buried so deep you can't feel it right now, it's there. And hope is what keeps us going, even when everything else feels impossible." The girl stared at her for a long moment, her throat bobbing as she swallowed hard. Then she dropped her gaze, shaking her head. "I don't even know where to start," she murmured. Carrie reached into her bag and pulled out a small folded piece of paper. She scribbled something on the back before sliding it across the table. "There's a shelter a few blocks from here," she said. "They help people get back on their feet. And if you ever need someone to talk to," she pointed to the number she had written, "call me." The girl hesitated, staring at the paper as if it might disappear. Slowly, her fingers closed around it, holding it tightly in her palm. "You'd really answer?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. Carrie met her gaze, unwavering. "Absolutely," she said, "because someone answered for me when I needed it." For the first time, something changed in the girl's expression. It wasn't quite hope, not yet, but it was something close. A flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as invisible as she thought. But before she could say anything else, movement at the edge of the patio caught their attention. A few strangers had gathered nearby, their eyes shifting between Carrie and the girl, drawn by the rawness of their conversation. The girl stiffened, her grip on the paper tightening. "They're staring," she mumbled. Carrie glanced at the small crowd, then back at the girl, a soft smile touching her lips. "Let them," she said. "Maybe they needed to hear this too." The girl swallowed, shifting uncomfortably. She wasn't used to being noticed, but for the first time, it didn't feel quite as terrifying as before. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible after all. The cafe's patio had grown quieter, the casual hum of conversation replaced by something more deliberate. Curiosity, quiet reflection. The small audience that had gathered around them remained at a respectful distance, their expressions ranging from intrigue to quiet awe. The girl shifted in her seat, glancing around before leaning in slightly. "I don't like people watching me," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Carrie nodded in understanding. "I get that," she said. "Sometimes it feels safer to be invisible, right?" The girl hesitated before nodding slowly. "I used to feel that way too," Carrie continued. Like if people really saw me, really knew everything about me, they'd walk away. The girl's eyes flickered with something unspoken. And did they? Carrie exhaled softly, glancing down at the cup in her hands. Some did, she admitted. But the ones who mattered, they stayed. And that's what I learned. People who truly care won't leave just because you're struggling. The girl chewed the inside of her cheek, considering Carrie's words. Then, almost reluctantly, she asked, "What if I don't have anyone like that?" Carrie met her gaze unwavering. "You will," she said. "Sometimes the right people come into your life when you least expect it." The girl looked down at the crumpled paper in her hand, the number and address staring back at her. "And you think this place will help?" Carrie nodded. "I do. But more than that, I think you're stronger than you realize. Asking for help, it's not weakness. It's one of the bravest things you can do." The girl scoffed, shaking her head. "I don't feel brave." Carrie's lips curved into a soft smile. "Most of the bravest people I've met never do." For a moment they sat in silence, the sounds of the city filling the space between them. Then, from the edge of the patio, a voice broke through. "Excuse me," a woman said hesitantly. She was older, maybe in her 60s, her silver hair pulled into a loose bun. She clutched a grocery bag in one hand, her gaze gentle but earnest. "I don't mean to intrude, but—" She hesitated, then smiled faintly. "That was beautiful." Carrie glanced up, surprised by the interruption. "Oh," she said, offering a small, polite smile. "Thank you." The woman's gaze shifted to the girl, her expression softening. I want you to know that people do care, even strangers." The girl stiffened slightly, unused to such direct kindness. She looked at Carrie, unsure of how to respond. Carrie offered her an encouraging nod. "See," she said gently, "you're not as alone as you think." The girl swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the paper in her hands. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't sure what to feel. Carrie studied her carefully. "Can I ask you something?" The girl hesitated before nodding. "If you could have anything at all, what would it be?" The girl's brows knitted together, as if she'd never been asked that before. She thought for a long moment before answering, her voice barely above a whisper. "A home," she said. Carrie's heart clenched. She had expected a vague answer, maybe something about money or food or even a fresh start, but the way the girl said it, so raw and honest, made her chest tighten. "Not just a house," the girl clarified, glancing up. "A real home, where I don't have to wonder if I'll get kicked out, where I don't have to be scared all the time." Carrie swallowed the lump in her throat. "That's not too much to ask for," she said softly. The girl let out a breathy laugh, but there was no humor in it. "It feels like it is." Carrie reached across the table, placing a gentle hand over the girl's. "It's not," she said firmly, "and I believe you'll have that one day." The girl didn't pull away. Instead, she looked down at their hands, as if trying to understand why someone like Carrie, someone with everything, would care about someone like her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough to hold on to for now. The girl sat quietly, her fingers still resting beneath Carrie's hand. It was a simple touch, but it carried more weight than words ever could. For years she had convinced herself that kindness was a transaction, something people only offered when they wanted something in return. But Carrie wasn't asking for anything. She was just there, and that more than anything scared her. She pulled her hand back slowly, tucking it under the sleeve of her oversized hoodie. "I don't know if I believe you," she admitted, her voice hesitant. Carrie didn't flinch at the honesty. "That's okay," she said. "Belief doesn't happen all at once. It's like a seed. You just have to plant it and give it time to grow." The girl let out a small breath, staring at the folded paper in her hands. She traced the edge of it with her thumb, as if trying to memorize the texture. "And what if it never grows?" Carrie tilted her head slightly, considering the question. "Then maybe you just haven't found the right soil yet." The girl frowned, confused. "What does that mean?" "It means," Carrie explained, "that sometimes when life feels impossible, it's not because you're broken, it's because you're in the wrong place. You weren't meant to survive in the dark. You were meant to grow in the light." The girl swallowed hard, looking away. She wanted to believe that, she really did. But every time she tried, the memories came back. The nights spent alone, the doors that had slammed in her face, the voices that told her she would never be anything more than a lost cause. She clenched her jaw. "What if I don't deserve it?" Carrie's expression softened. "Why would you think that?" The girl hesitated. Then, after a long pause, she whispered, "Because I left." Carrie's brows furrowed. "Left?" The girl nodded slowly, her throat tightening. I ran away. From foster care. From school. From everything. I thought I'd be better off alone, but... Her voice cracked and she quickly shook her head. I was wrong. Carrie felt her chest tighten. She had suspected the girl had been through more than she was letting on, but hearing it now spoken aloud in a voice so fragile made it real. You were just trying to survive, Carrie said gently. The girl let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, well, I'm not doing a great job of that either. Carrie studied her for a moment, then leaned forward, her voice firm but full of warmth. Listen to me. You are not a mistake. You are not beyond saving, and no matter what you've done, no matter how far you've run, you are not too lost to be found. The girl's eyes burned with unshed tears. She wanted to believe those words. She wanted to hold on to them. But fear was a powerful thing, and it had been her companion for far too long. Carrie saw the doubt flicker across her face and reached for her coffee, taking a slow sip before speaking again. You know, there's a story in the Bible about a lost sheep, she said casually. The girl wiped her nose on her sleeve, sniffling. What does that have to do with me? Carrie smiled softly. Well, this shepherd had 100 sheep and one wandered off. Most people would have said, forget about it. You still have 99. But not this shepherd. He left everything behind to go find that one lost sheep, because to him every single one mattered. The girl swallowed hard. And did he find it? Carrie nodded. Yeah, and when he did, he carried it home. The girl didn't say anything at first. She just stared at Carrie as if trying to decide whether she was telling the truth. You really believe that? She asked finally. Carrie's voice was unwavering. With all my heart. The girl looked down, her grip tightening around the paper in her hands. For the first time she wondered if maybe, just maybe, someone was out there searching for her too. And if that was true, maybe she didn't have to be lost forever. The girl sat there, still clutching the folded paper like it was something fragile, something she wasn't sure she was allowed to keep. Carrie watched her carefully, giving her space to process everything. Some choices couldn't be rushed. After a long silence, the girl exhaled and shook her head slightly. I don't know if I can do this. Carrie didn't push. Instead, she offered a small, reassuring smile. You don't have to do it alone. The girl looked up, and for the first time there was something new in her eyes. Not just fear, not just doubt, but something softer, a quiet kind of longing. You meant it, didn't you? She asked. That you'd answer if I called? Carrie nodded without hesitation. I don't say things I don't mean. The girl swallowed hard, looking down at the number again. She traced the ink with her thumb, as if testing whether it would fade. It didn't. From the corner of her eye, she noticed the small crowd still watching. A couple holding hands, a young man in a business suit, an older woman with soft, knowing eyes. None of them spoke, but their presence lingered like silent witnesses to a moment they weren't sure they were meant to see. She took a deep breath and sat up a little straighter. Okay, she said finally, her voice almost too soft to hear. I'll try. Carrie smiled, warmth filling her chest. That's all anyone can do. The girl nodded, more to herself than anyone else. Slowly, she tucked the paper into her backpack, zipping it inside like something precious. For the first time in a long time, she had something real, something hopeful. She stood, gripping the straps of her bag, but hesitated. Carrie looked up. Yeah? The girl bit her lip, then gave her a small, hesitant smile. Thanks for seeing me. Carrie's own smile softened. You were never invisible, she said. Not to me, and not to him. The girl didn't say anything, but something in her posture shifted, lighter, braver. She turned and stepped away, her bare feet making soft sounds against the pavement. Carrie watched her go, her heart full of a quiet kind of hope. She knew this wasn't the end of the girl's story. It was just the beginning. The small crowd began to disperse, but before they did, the older woman with the grocery bag stepped forward. That was something special, she said softly. I think you just changed that girl's life. Carrie glanced down at her now cold coffee, a thoughtful expression on her face. Maybe, she said. Or maybe she just needed someone to remind her she wasn't alone. The woman nodded, her eyes glistening. We all need that sometimes. Carrie exhaled, watching the sun dip lower behind the buildings. The world kept moving as it always did. But for one girl, one lost sheep, maybe, just maybe, things had changed, and that was enough. You never know what someone is going through. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a smile, a conversation, a simple reminder that they matter, can change everything. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Maybe there's someone in your life who needs to hear the same words. Maybe you needed to hear them today. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments what part of this story resonated with you the most. And if you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because at the end of the day, we all need reminders that no one is too lost to be found.